for the longest time, I would blame myself for a lot of different things. And I would constantly be thinking about, is it me? Am I actually difficult to work with? And is it something that I very much find challenging, that it just is incongruent with how other people operate? And I've come to realize I just have very different priorities, different viewpoints than the majority of the people of this world. And it's fascinating because I think of who I am. I try to be much more holistic and much more inclusive than a lot of people in terms of how they see the world. I think a lot of people see it as very cut and dry, very much like there is this sort of linear thing that you perform. You have an intention, you perform an action for that intention, and you get the results. And I have never viewed the world in that way. It was one of these things. I remember when I was taking my engineering classes many years ago, there was always this talk for efficiency. And I always think of why, right? Like, I know that there is a degree of efficiency that we actually need in this world, but there is a lot of other things that are really incredibly important that just never get talked about when we talk about efficiency. And I always used to think, blame myself as am I just incongruent? Am I the problem? And the truth is I think I'm just kind of weird. And I just don't quite fit in with the normal way of viewing the world. And I don't have a square, I don't have the right peg. I'm a square peg in a round hole. And I constantly feel that way. I know it's kind of really strange if you were to look at me, you were to probably to say, if you were to see me in person, you would say, oh, this guy really cares about that stuff, efficiency. And the truth is, yeah, I try to get my shit done. I try to get it done every day. But at the same time, I realize that the pressures that I put on myself are not to the same amount that other people put in. And what that allows me to do is that allows me to, when things don't go right, I put in my effort. I don't believe in the feedback mechanism that is often talked about. Then you put in the effort and you get the rewards. I don't believe in that. I believe in the fact that you just put in the effort and the rewards don't matter. And that allows me to take some time to spend some time for myself. It allows me to spend more time with my family. It allows me to spend more time to smile, to think about other people's feelings, to really think about the world in general in terms of what I'm doing and how I fit in with the world. Whereas everybody else is so worried about getting there quickly that they're forgetting that there's all sorts of other things that are going on, and that definition of there doesn't exist. It's constantly changing. And if you're thinking about that, the sort of changing nature of the world, then it makes no sense by the time that you actually optimize on the existing world. You become so efficient that it's passed by you, that there's something else that's going on. And I think in my head, I was always a little bit more mature. I think And I know that sounds really stupid, and I'm just thinking out loud. I was always a lot more. I don't like. I don't like giving myself kudos, but I was always much more mature for my age. And so there's always been a bit of a gap in terms of how I see the world. And so there was, in my teens and 20s, I worked hard. Whereas a lot of people were goofing off. But at the same time, that hard work was also about figuring out, how do I fit in with this world? And then because of that, I've been able to give a little bit more perspective, in the sense that if you just constantly goof off or constantly work, it doesn't really fit with the rest of the world. And it doesn't necessarily help you to do well if you do either one of those all the time. And I think that's having this healthy skepticism that goes on, particularly that we sort of see in, in typical American culture, that you have to work to get ahead and all of that kind of nonsense that you hear. And just come to the terms of, hey, why don't you just do your thing and try to love on the rest of the world as much as you possibly can? And by doing that, things change in your life. You get a lot more perspective than you'd ever imagine simply by thinking like that. And you see a lot less borders when you do that. You see that, like, your things like property and all of that kind of stuff, yeah, it matters. I understand. I'm not like, the extreme case of that, but at the same time, it really doesn't matter that much, right? And that's where you have to take that step back and say, if you want to do good, and here's the great irony, this is absolute irony that a lot of people don't understand, is that when you take that step back and you don't worry about the outcomes, you don't worry about everything that happens from it, and whether you look good and all of that kind of stuff, and you just try, you actually make a lot more progress. You do a lot better, at least in my mind, where I'm a lot more of a stable person because of it. I'm a lot more, honestly, that if anything was to happen, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. It allows me to do things that are interesting and that are just for me and nobody else. Like doing the whole reciprocity project. That's okay to me. All right, take care and have a wonderful day.